Flowers my mother sent for the grand opening were still on the hostess stand when my brother walked through the door. Pale yellow roses, half wilted by then. I kept them anyway. Old habit, I guess, holding on to things longer than I should. It was a Thursday evening in late October, the kind that drops cold fast once the sun goes down. We had a full house that night. Every table in the dining room, the two-top by the window, even the bar seats. 16 months of work, and it had finally started to feel like something real. My sous chef Andres had just plated a perfect duck confit, and I was standing near the pass watching the rhythm of the room, servers moving between tables. The hum of conversation, glasses catching the light, when one of my servers touched my arm. "Someone asking for you at the door," she said. I assumed it was a vendor. Sometimes they show up without appointments, thinking a busy dinner service is a good time to pitch. It wasn't a vendor. My brother was standing in the entry, and behind him, my mother and my father. I hadn't spoken to any of them in 3.5 years. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the part that came before it. I'm 31 now. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, the middle of 3 kids. My older brother Seth was always the one my parents talked about. He had this easy confidence that made adults trust him immediately, the kind of kid who got away with things because he smiled when he apologized. My younger sister was the baby, still in college when everything fell apart. And then there was me, the one who got a culinary degree, moved to a different city, and built a life that looked nothing like what my family imagined for me. I opened Sable Salt in February of last year. It's a 36-seat American bistro in a neighborhood that was still half industrial when I signed my lease. Exposed brick, warm pendant lighting, a short menu that changed with what the farmers brought in. The food critics weren't interested at first. That's fine. The regulars were. Getting there cost everything I had. And I mean that almost literally. I'd spent 6 years working in other people's kitchens. Prep cook, line cook, sous chef, a brief stint at a hotel dining room I try not to think about. I saved. I went without. I turned down a wedding invitation to cover a Saturday shift. I didn't take a vacation for 4 years. I had $48,000 in savings and a business plan I revised 11 times when I finally found the right space. My family knew I was doing well. I'd mentioned the restaurant in passing during the one phone call we managed per quarter, the ones that always ended with my mother asking if I was sure about all this. They knew the name. They'd never visited. The estrangement started gradually, the way these things usually do. My brother Seth had always borrowed money. $20 here, $300 there. I gave it without question for years because I thought that's what family does. Then one Christmas, he asked for $4,000 to cover a gap in his rent. I said I couldn't do it. I was in the middle of saving for the restaurant. Every dollar mattered. He told me I was selfish. My mother agreed with him. Not in those words, but in the particular way she went quiet and then changed the subject that I'd been reading for 30 years. After that, the calls got shorter. Then they stopped being calls and became texts. Then the texts became once-a-month check-ins. Then my brother stopped texting altogether. My father followed, and my mother sent me a message on my birthday that said, "Hope you have a good day," with a period instead of an exclamation point, which from her was basically a formal notice of disappointment. I got the message. I stopped trying to close the gap. 3.5 years of silence. I made peace with it. Not gracefully at first. I spent a lot of evenings in the year before the restaurant opened processing it with my therapist, untangling the guilt from the grief from the relief. Yes, relief. There was relief in it too. Seth walked toward me before I could decide what to do. He looked older. We both did, I suppose. He was wearing a sport coat that didn't quite fit at the shoulders, and he had the particular look of someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say. My mother hung back near the door. She was turning her ring around her finger, which she does when she's anxious. My father stood with his arms crossed. "We need to talk," Seth said. Just like that. No hello. No, it's been a long time. Just the flat entry of someone who has decided the situation doesn't require pleasantries. "I'm in the middle of dinner service," I said. "It won't take long." I could feel my server hovering nearby, not sure whether to intervene. I looked at my mother. She met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. 5 minutes, I said. Bar area. I told my floor manager to keep things moving, poured myself nothing, and stood at the far end of the bar where the noise from the dining room would cover our conversation. Seth put a manila envelope on the bar. "Open it," he said. "I didn't touch it. Tell me what it is first." He exhaled. The rehearsed composure slipped a little. "It's a business investment agreement. There are some people, investors I brought in a few years ago, who are owed a return. The business didn't work out the way we planned. They're threatening to sue." I waited. "The amount is significant," he said. "And there's a lien issue with Mom and Dad's house because of how the loan was structured. We need capital to settle it before it goes to court." What does this have to do with me? He looked at me like I'd said something stupid. "We're family." "We haven't spoken in 3.5 years, Seth." "That doesn't mean, what are you asking for specifically?" He put his hand flat on the envelope, 20% of Sable Salt, assigned to a family holding entity. It would give us leverage to renegotiate the terms with the investors. "We're not asking you to pay anything out of pocket." I heard the words. I understood them. I also understood that what he was describing, assigning equity in my business to cover his debt, would give those investors, or whoever the family holding entity actually was, a legal foothold in something I'd built entirely on my own. "No," I said. He didn't blink. "We thought you might say that. Dad wants to talk." My father walked over. He didn't sit. He stood with his weight forward, the same posture he'd used at the head of the dinner table, my whole childhood when he wanted to communicate seriousness. "This isn't a request," he said. "If you won't cooperate, we'll have no choice but to involve your landlord. We know you're in the first year of a lease renewal. We can raise questions about your financials that would make things very uncomfortable." I looked at him for a long moment. "You're threatening to contact my landlord," I said slowly. "We're explaining the situation. You're threatening me with my landlord, in my restaurant, on a Thursday night." My mother, still near the door, looked at the floor. I picked up the envelope. I didn't open it. I held it in both hands and thought about the 6 years of overnight shifts and the $48,000 and the 11 revisions of my business plan and the wedding I missed and the vacations I didn't take. And the birthday text with the period instead of the exclamation point. "Give me until the end of service," I said. "Come back at 10. What I did in the next 3 hours was not what they expected. My father thought I was stalling because I was scared. He was wrong. I wasn't stalling. I was working. I called my attorney, not a family friend, an actual business attorney I'd retained before I signed my lease, because I learned by then that hope is not a legal strategy. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a moment, then she said 2 words. "Extortion." "Possibly." She told me to document everything. She walked me through what to look for in the envelope. Then I opened it. Inside was a loan document, the kind you might draw up between family members. Informal structure, terms written in plain language rather than legal boilerplate. It listed my name as a co-signer on a $31,000 business loan taken out 3 years ago. I had never signed that document. I stared at my name, my signature, at the bottom of page 2 for a very long time. Then I photographed every page and texted them to my attorney. Her response came in 4 minutes. "That is not your signature. Do not let them leave without witnesses. Do not agree to anything." I'm filing paperwork in the morning. I put my phone in my apron pocket and walked back into the dining room. The last table cleared at 9:45. I asked my staff to finish side work and take their time. I didn't explain why. They didn't ask. At 10 o'clock, my family came back. The dining room was mostly dim by then, just the bar lights and the pendant above the pass. They sat at a 4-top near the window. I sat across from them. I set my phone on the table, face up, recording. "I reviewed the documents," I said. Seth leaned forward. "And?" "The signature on the co-signer line is not mine." Silence. "I don't know who signed it," I said. "But I've sent copies to my attorney. She'll have a forensic document examiner look at it. That's standard procedure for cases involving potential fraud." My father's jaw tightened. "I also want to be clear," I said, "that what you described earlier, threatening to contact my landlord if I didn't agree to your terms, is extortion under Ohio law." I looked it up. "It's a 3rd-degree felony." My mother made a small sound. "I'm not calling the police tonight," I said. "I thought about it. But I want you to understand the position you're in before you decide how to proceed." Seth started to say something. I held up one hand. I'm not finished. You came here tonight to take 20% of something I built while you were not in my life. You were not there when I was working doubles and eating leftover prep food for dinner. You were not there when my first investor pulled out 3 weeks before I was supposed to sign my lease. You were not there for any of it, and you came here, to my business, on a service night, and threatened me. I stood up. My attorney will be in contact. If you want to settle the signature matter privately, that option is on the table for the next 14 days. After that, she moves forward however she thinks is appropriate. I'd encourage you to talk to a lawyer before that deadline. I picked up my phone. I'm going to ask you to leave now. If you don't, I'll call the police and report a trespass. That's not a threat. That's just information. They left. My mother paused at the door, like she might say something. For a moment her face looked the way I remembered it from when I was small, before everything got complicated, tired, and a little sad and maybe sorry. I didn't know if that was real or if I was just looking for it. She didn't say anything. She followed my father and Seth out into the cold. I locked the front door. I stood in the empty dining room for a minute, just breathing. Andres came out from the back and asked if I was okay. I told him yes, and I mostly meant it. I finished closing. I reconciled the till. I did the things you do at the end of a service night. Then I got in my car and sat in the parking lot for about 10 minutes. My attorney filed the fraud complaint the following morning. The loan document went to a forensic examiner. 3 weeks later, the examiner confirmed what I already knew. The signature was not mine. The case is ongoing, which is the only thing I'll say about that. I changed my phone number in November. I kept the restaurant. I think about that night sometimes, when I'm doing prep in the morning, the quiet hour before the staff arrives, when it's just me and the kitchen and whatever's coming in from the farmers that week. I think about what my father said. This isn't a request. He was right about one thing. It wasn't a request. It was a test, though, not the one he thought he was giving me. The thing about building something from nothing is that you know exactly what it's worth, because you know exactly what it cost. Not in dollars, in choices, in things you gave up, things you said no to, nights you were too tired to be a good friend or a good daughter or whatever else people needed from you. You carry that math in your body. Nobody gets to take a piece of that because they share your last name. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sure when that shifted. Somewhere around the first really good review maybe, or the night we had a 3-month wait list, and I stood in the kitchen thinking about the me who revised that business plan 11 times and felt something like gratitude for her stubbornness. Anger didn't survive that. It just didn't have anywhere left to live. What I have instead is something steadier, clearer. I know what I built. I know who built it. And I know that the pale yellow roses my mother sent for the grand opening, the ones that were already half wilted by the time Seth walked through the door, were the last thing she ever gave me that I kept. I composted them the next morning. The restaurant was full again that Friday, and I had food to cook. I've thought a lot about what my father said that night. This isn't a request. He meant it as a threat, but honestly, it was the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. Because he was right, it wasn't a request. It was a reveal of who he was, of who Seth was, of what they'd always believed about me, underneath the politeness and the quarterly phone calls, that I was a resource to be managed, not a person to be known. The thing about cause and effect is that it doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates quietly until one Thursday night it walks through your front door, wearing a sport coat that doesn't fit right. Every time my family dismissed what I was building, every time my mother went quiet instead of standing up for me, every time Seth borrowed money and called me selfish when I couldn't give more, that was a choice. A small one maybe, on its own. But choices stack. They compound. And the stack they built over 20 years led them exactly to where they ended up, standing in the parking lot of my restaurant at 10 o'clock on a cold October night with nothing in their hands. I didn't plan that outcome. I didn't engineer it. I just stopped absorbing the consequences of their behavior. And eventually, their behavior had nowhere to go but back to them. There's something I want to say about what it takes to build a life that can't be taken from you. It's not about money, though money matters. It's not about being smarter or tougher than everyone else. It's about deciding, really deciding, all the way down, that your choices are yours to make and yours to live with. That nobody else gets to write the terms. That the work you do in the quiet, when no one is watching and no one is applauding, is still worth doing. Maybe it's worth doing more because of that. I revised my business plan 11 times. I missed a wedding. I ate prep scraps for dinner more nights than I can count. Not because I was grinding for some reward at the end. I didn't know if there would be a reward. I did it because the alternative was staying in a life that felt like it was slowly swallowing me, and I wasn't willing to do that. That's the part nobody tells you about integrity. It's not dramatic. It's just the daily decision to do the thing you said you were going to do. Even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely, even when your family thinks you're selfish for trying. Seth wanted a piece of something I built in his absence. My father thought a threat was leverage. What they didn't understand, couldn't understand, maybe, is that you can't extract value from someone who knows exactly what their work is worth. And I knew. I'd done the math in my body for 6 years. The forged signature on that loan document told me everything I needed to know about how little they thought of me, and the forensic report that confirmed it wasn't my handwriting told me everything I needed to know about the difference between what people claim and what the evidence shows. I changed my number in November. The restaurant was full on Friday. Some things resolve slowly. Some things resolve simply. This one resolved simply. This one resolved simply. Not easily, but simply. I knew what I'd built. I knew what it cost. And I knew that no version of love worth keeping comes with a manila envelope and a deadline.